So, following on from soothsayer Spence's forecasts about how the landscape is going to flow through, you're suggesting that Joseph Parker, as a result of the interim position that he occupies, will be given the scattered WBO belt when Usyk fights Daniel Dubois. And you're now suggesting that Anthony Joshua comes into that mix and will likely fight
Joseph Parker in the rematch.
In the rematch of the
WBO
2018 Stinkfest of the Boredom fight.
Well, listen, that's what I...
Sort of froze, didn't he, Parker, that night?
Referee didn't help, did he?
It was a long time ago as well.
Referee didn't help.
Listen,
he's a different fighter now, though.
He's a totally different fighter. It was a long time ago, and it's a totally different fight now as well.
Mentally and physically as well, the weight he's put on.
Well, it's turned around, isn't it? Like, Parker's now going in as the champion, Joshua the challenger. They're both in different stages of their career, and it's a good fight, that one. Right. Would Joseph Parker start the favourite in many people's eyes? You know, that's where you're at with it.
Because of his rich vein of form right now.
Absolutely.
And Joshua being cleaned out by Daniel Dubois,
Absolutely.
You're going to suggest that.
But that's what I believe will happen.
Despite you being a Joshua lickspittle, does he merit the opportunity? Should he be getting this shot for the WBO? Shouldn't it be someone like Ajit Kabayel, whose recent run of form...
Kabayel's the interim WBC champion, so yeah, he deserves that shot, and he'll be looking at the bigger picture.
He's been given a world title shot for the WBO.
Simon, you know the commercial business and the commercial value of this game.
So this is a money fight.
Casual fans, commercial, AJ Parker makes much more sense. Kabayel, of course he deserves a shot. Martin Bakole, we've waited around, deserves the shots. But what makes commercial business sense, AJ Parker does, if Usyk fights Dubois.
Bakole... protected his position, didn't he, as a result of taking the fight against Joe Parker, getting the multiple millions of dollars that he got on the caveat that he was protected in the Ajagba fight, wasn't he, and made a second. So we know what his particular route map is.
Yeah.
Do you think Anthony Joshua is credible now as a challenger for a world title again?
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
Why not?
Why?
Why not?
He's reigned as a champion. He's a two-time heavyweight champion of the world who's been a poster boy for boxing for many, many years. And he's had a loss to Daniel Dubois, having found a bit of form again. Dubois, brilliant. Let's think about how Dubois took over Wembley that night rather than AJ's defeat. AJ's still a massive name in boxing and definitely deserves
but as
a
a
chance.
force, I'm not talking about his name. I'm not talking about the marketability of it. I was the only person in the room that potentially suggests that I wasn't buying into the fully rehabilitated because of the Jermaine Franklin fight, because of the Robert Helenius fight, because of the Otto Walling fight, and because of the Ngannou fight. I've constantly said the first time he gets hit on the chin by a live one, I think he's going to have a problem.
Right,
and so with that in mind, that's the reasons why I say about the credibility of Anthony Joshua fighting for a world title again. Not because of his marketing name. We all accept he's a poster boy.
I'll flip it to you. Who do you think starts favourite of Anthony Joshua, Joseph Parker, if that fight's made?
In current form, because he's not recovering from a crisis of probably the worst defeat in his career, Joseph Parker.
But what I'm saying is,
coming from being blasted around a ring.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So you had to think about that one. So Joseph Parker's a WBO champion. What I'm saying is, so why doesn't he warrant or credit being the challenger for that title against Joseph Parker?
Say that again?
We're saying that you're saying, does he deserve that shot? Why doesn't Anthony Joshua deserve that shot? Like Joseph Parker will be elevated to WBO champion. He deserves that shot. He still has that marketability. He still has that credibility. And he starts favourite for me against Parker.
From a marketing point of view, absolutely. And the reasons why I test it is because I think Joseph Parker has beaten credible opponents in recent times, and I don't think Anthony Joshua has.
But he's at that place where he would...
Hence the reason why Otto Walling got beat up by Derek Chisora.
Yeah, but listen, Anthony Joshua still very much deserves that place to box for a world title.
Joshua boxed well against Otto Walling, and listen, he cleaned out Ngannou, and under Ben Davison, he was looking fine, and he came into that fight against Daniel Dubois as the favourite. He got beaten up, he got taken out, and it was a brilliant win for Daniel Dubois. Can Joshua recover from that? He did against Andy Ruiz.
But he don't want the rematch, does he?
I think if you'd had the rematch straight away, I think that, and Dubois had won again, that could have been the end of AJ. So I think that's the right decision to wait. I think the Fury fight is the big fight for Joshua. We now know Tyson is in soccer age, so he's out of the picture for a bit. But I still think that is the fight that has to happen. So I worry about Joshua against other opponents before that, because you still want to see Fury-Joshua. That's the big fight for the casuals. But does AJ deserve a chance to fight for a world title again? 100%.
And I think that was the fight that Joshua was originally waiting for, that Tyson Fury fight. But with Fury being tied up with other obligations...
Made it clear.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that's why Joshua now, the roadmap back for him is to fight Parker, Because you can't sit around waiting for Fury when we don't know if Fury's even going to ever box again. But if he wins that fight against Parker and he's got that WBO strap again, that makes him and Fury an even bigger fight.
So if he loses against Parker, would you then be in the camp of still advocating for the Fury fight?
Well, I think if he loses against Parker, then he will have to seriously consider where he's at and what he's going to do next, because that surely loses commercial value, him versus... If he loses against Parker, him Fury, down the road with Fury coming back off a long layoff, it's not the fight.
I think it's an interesting fight as well, Joshua Parker, because as you said, it wasn't a good one in Wales all those years ago.
It wasn't.
It wasn't a
But
good
the
fight
referee
at all.
didn't help.
It wasn't good, but it was a unification, and Joe came in as a world champion, and it was a decent performance from Joshua, nothing more really. But it's a much more fascinating rematch now, all these years later, because Parker mentally is a different person. He's matured. Physically, he looked huge. He looked in such massive condition against Bakoli. And AJ's coming off a bad defeat, so I think
so there's a narrative there.
Real curiosity.
Absolutely. Look, one person that's got a big interest in the heavyweight divisions, of course, I would suggest the king of the heavyweight division, which is Frank Warren. Let's have a listen to what he's had to say.
On Thursday, you said by the evening you'd tell us who Moses Itauma was going to fight. Can you tell us now?
He will be on the card.
And which card?
On the Manchester card.
On April the 5th. Okay, that's good to know. And what's happening with Fabio Wardley? I think I know.
You know more than I do. We'll be announcing that next week. He's got a very, very big fight coming up.
Could it be in a football ground?
I hope so. I'd love to do that for him. I'd love to deliver that.
Could it be an American?
It could be an American. One thing for sure, it'll be somebody from this planet.
Right, riddle me this, riddle me that. Who is Frank speaking of? I thought we had established, or maybe we just established it amongst ourselves, that Fabio was fighting Kubrat Pulev.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at.
Where's this one going then?
Fabio's WBA #1. Pulev is the regular champion, and that is the natural choice and progression, I think, for Fabio Wardley is to box Pulev. I mean, you're talking about, like when Gareth there talking about big American names, you go, well, is it a Deontay Wilder or someone like that, or an Andy Ruiz? No, I think that Pulev is the obvious choice. That is the one that you would want to take in Ipswich at the ground.
Why?
That's the obvious fight.
Why?
Because he's the WBA regular champion, and for him, it puts him up in the mix now, looking at getting the other big fights. I mean, from the business point of view, for him to win the regular,
right,
instead of going somewhere else, that's the obvious progression.
It's a good fight for Fabio Wardley. I've heard that Ipswich was being touted for a while. I think the summer at Portman Road is a great opportunity. However, it's an interesting situation because I was with Moses Itauma the other day. Moses wasn't quite sure sort of who he's fighting. There's still that Mike Tyson record dangling around if Moses can become a world champion by the end of May. So I was thinking, does Moses then fight Kubrat Pulev? But I think Frank wants to take his time with Moses Itauma, match him properly. I'm hearing maybe someone like Nelson Heiser, the undefeated Albanian, would be next for Moses. But I think that's a good fight with Pulev and Wardley for the summer. If it is an American name, you can look at Deontay Wilder's a massive name, obviously, still. You could look at maybe Baby Miller, and you could look at the one I thought over the weekend when I was coming home. I thought maybe Andy Ruiz, because he's known, obviously, to British fight fans. But if Fabio Wardley and Kubrat Pulev
what about
is
Jared
made,
Anderson, the one that Martin Bakoli flattened?
That's another one. That's another one. He's in there. There's so many heavyweights, Simon, that could be fighting in these fights. As you say, you mentioned Lawrence Okoli the other day. We haven't really talked about Ajit Kabayel. There's so many. Zhilei Zhang, I know he got beaten, but still a big draw in China. There's so many fighters out there. And Dillian White. Derek Chisora, that should happen.
Dillian White, Derek Chisora, 3 will be the next fight for both of those guys. I think that's the natural one as well.
So what is, I mean, you touched upon Moses Itauma, and we've debated how good this kid is on previous shows. We don't need to rehearse that speech. But if you were giving advice to people around Itauma, what would you be suggesting for him, Adam? What would you think? I mean, obviously he's knocking out people. Marius Wacky whacked him out, excuse the expression. So Dempsey McKean, obviously a lot was made of the fact that he took Philip Hrgovic deep into the fight and to get rid of him, and obviously Moses got rid of him pretty quickly. So everyone's getting very excited about this kid, and rightly so. But the building blocks, I don't think he's going to... This idea that he should be chasing Mike Tyson's record, you should fight when you're ready to fight at the levels that you're ready to fight at and not be dictated to by other people's agendas and history. How would you guide his career? What would you think that Frank should be doing? And Frank's a master at this. I mean, we know that anyway, so we're not dispensing advice that Frank probably doesn't already know. But for people listening to the show, what do you think that we should be doing with Itauma?
Frank's the best. I mean,
I agree.
the way he got Ricky at matchmaking and guiding fighters to a certain point. I think you see back at Ricky Hatton, Nassim Mohammed, Joe Calzaghe, proven. Frank getting it right most of the time. Didn't with Hamza Shiraz the other day, by the way, but most of the time gets it right. I think with Moses, I spoke to Marius Vac out in Spain when he was in the Usyk camp.
Did you pick? By the way, before I let you get away with that one, did you pick Shiraz to win that fight, or did you pick Adamas?
I thought Shiraz would have enough about him, and I thought he underperformed, and I was disappointed in him.
Right. So then it doesn't make Frank necessarily wrong, then, does it?
No, I think Frank got it. I thought he got it right. Maybe Hamza got it wrong on the night, but Frank normally gets it right. You know what I mean? And Frank was in the corner, sort of screaming for Hamza, as well as His Excellency.
Absolutely.
However, we digress. Marius Vac told me that Moses Itauma was the best he's faced. He said his angles were unbelievable. I thought the way he dealt with Dempsey McKean was terrific. Yep. Moses is itching for it. He wants to break Tyson's record. He wants to fight Usyk next, but he also wants to go into Usyk's camp to learn because he's smart, Moses. So what I would do is I would do that. I would get him a chance and maybe spend a bit of time with Usyk. He's had time with Fury. He's had time with most of them. Get some time, take a little bit more. I think someone like Nelson Heiser, undefeated, that's a good name, Justice Hooney, someone like that. Then maybe by the end of the year, early next year, we can be looking at a possible world title tilt, but not quite yet for Moses. Take your time. He's so young. He's 20. He's got so much about him. He's a smart fighter. He's a very committed fighter. He's a southpaw. He hits hard. He's got great movement. He's the future.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Frank. That's Frank's plan anyway. Like he recognises that. Having a conversation with him, look, if I put him in with Anthony Joshua now, he could beat Anthony Joshua now. That's where they feel that he's sat right now. He could beat half of the top 5 or 6. But it's all about once you beat them, you're there, and it's about the timing and the longevity of it. And I think that's what he's looking at with Moses.
There is a vast difference, though, isn't there? I mean, I take you, and because I'm always going to bow to your knowledge, but there's one thing looking at what he's doing to opponents that are at a certain level. It's another thing sticking him in with very experienced, world-level operators that all of a sudden show you up the things that we haven't seen him yet make mistakes in.
Yeah.
So surely the argument that he could stick him in and beat this person, he could beat that person. That's a little bit
I totally
debatable
agree.
because these guys are experienced operators.
Totally agree with you because, like you say, like if you want to look at it and you're talking about boxing at that sort of level and putting them in with them sort of fighters, then you go like. I tell you what, go in with an Andy Ruiz Jr., a guy that's tough.
That's what happened to Dubois in his third phase. Lost to Joyce, lost again to Usyk, but then coming back, he had to get through Miller. He had to get through Hrgovic before Joshua.
Absolutely.
It's about building.
You mentioned Joe Joyce, and you bring me to that subject matter because obviously the fight with Dillian White's dropped out. Filip Hrgovic replaces him. Hrgovic at one time was considered to be, well, he wasn't considered to be, he was the mandatory challenger for the IBF.
Yeah.
Daniel Dubois took some heavy licks off him, came through and dealt with him. This is a very difficult fight for someone whose star has been massively eclipsed, Joe Joyce, ever since Zhang, ever since the foolish decision to take the immediate rematch with Zhang. And of course now the result against Derek Chisora, all of them have brought Joe Joyce to this crossroads now where this is it now.
But
bust for him. If he loses this fight, he's done, but it's a difficult fight to take, isn't it?
This is the obvious choice, though, where he's at and his age, taking his age into consideration, the opportunities that he's had, and losing to Zhang a couple of times, you have to take this fight against Hrgovic, who is coming off the defeat as well. It's the natural progression.
Is it a more difficult fight than the Dillian White fight?
Yes.
I think it is. And I think Heavy Impact had to be Heavy Impact. Queensbury moving to DAZN, wanted a big first show. We've already lost to Cody and Riakporhe from it. So I think that's a great replacement. A better, maybe, replacement. I think Hrgovic and Joyce is a fabulous fight. I think it will really blend.
Who wins?
I think you've got to say that Hrgovic would probably start the favourite.
Yes, I think Hrgovic starts favourite, but Joyce will give it absolutely everything. I think it's going to be a really, really entertaining fight.
Good fight, I agree.